Why don't you do the intro, Seth? Do you know it?
Okay, I studied this.
Do it.
Something. This is going to be a super secure virtual brown bag. So whatever classified information, feel free to
No, that's the exact
die keys, whatever.
opposite.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Welcome to the Virtual Brown Bag. Gather every week and talk shop, share tips, tricks, and talk development stuff. We do live streaming, so if you do share your screen, make sure that everything you're sharing is for the public eyes. So don't share your Amazon keys and secure passwords and all that other good stuff, because you will be hacked, and we don't want that. Yeah, so there we go. Thanksgiving week.
I have one thing that I can share really, really quick and then give it to you. So because I just got this right here. It's a little slider that you put over your camera, and you could easily block your camera, which is a good idea. And you could, I have it on my laptop right now, so I recommend getting one of those. Because the NSA can now literally turn on your camera remotely on many devices, and if they can do it, others can as well. And it's like a couple bucks. Who cares? Just do it.
All right. PSA announcement. The NSA is watching.
Yeah.
For $2, you can aggravate.
Well, they're watching because we're streaming it live, right?
That too. It's like, if you don't want the NSA to watch, don't live stream to YouTube.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, I wanted to say that it's a nice little useful thing. I like it.
All right.
I broke the build, so I'm just going to reset to place that.
Do it.
I'm getting can't find variable self. I think it might have something to do with I tried using isomorphic fetch the other day to try and get it work, to try and get my Mocha working on the React Native, like the GUI parts, because I have all my server-side stuff, and it did something weird. But I swear all my tests were passing yesterday. So,
It works on my machine. That's a good one. My friend Peter, whenever he talks about something he's working on, he always says, "My team did this," making him separate from the bad implementation. Like, I didn't do it, my team did it. So that's always a good excuse. My team did this.
I don't know about you guys, but my team sucks. I'm actually in the market for a new team. So.
Yeah.
My team is.
When you're a team of one, it's very easy.
Fuck. Man, there's a lot of self-esteem tied up. Too much pressure.
Sprint reviews involve a trip to psychiatrist.
George was complaining in the Slack channel
Was
today.
I? About what?
Well,
This time.
talking to a dude named Ryan, who is very into web components. And I never actually heard this critique from George before about web components, because I was around with Ryan. He's a really great guy, and he put a ton of work into that presentation. He's not like a super, but he's not like inside of the JavaScript community. And so I think he's just kind of maybe parroting or at least like has internalized some of the critiques that you read of JavaScript, of the JavaScript world. But he saw web components as being a response to what he saw as, I guess, the mess and the way that the complexity, I guess. And you were saying, which I never heard, that you have some opinions about web components that are on a more foundational level.
Yeah, and actually, I was not viewing his comments as saying it was a response to the broadness of the JavaScript community, but it actually my complaint is exactly about that part of it. So the complaint basically goes like this: if when I have a web component, the whole promise of web components to begin with was, hey, you can just put an element on your page and bring in whole very rich widgets, real compose your application out of that. So my kind of point of view is nobody cares if you can create a calendar widget. Like there's calendar widgets, jQuery, UI, whatever. It's not that Bootstrap. They work fine. They're not that big a deal. The bigger issue is, of course, I want to be able to, to have my director of marketing or something like that produce a widget. Like the marketing department produces a widget that has that's you plop this on the page and you get all of your recommended users, right? You do a little bit of configuration to push data back and forth, maybe configure some API endpoints, but it's going to give you like recommended products if you're browsing this current product. Which and the problem that actually ends up happening is, well, what happens if my page is using Angular, but they built their component using React? Okay, fine. You have to gather all those at once, but I, as a person who's including the component, has to make sure I get the entire third and fourth party structure of the libraries that their component uses correctly. Where it gets even more difficult is what happens if my application uses a global version of jQuery 1.7, which is required for SignalR, which I'm also using. What happens if I pull in their component, which uses a global version of jQuery 3.0 that breaks SignalR? There is no way, like, web components don't get an isolated JavaScript scope. And that's the issue. If they don't get an isolated JavaScript scope, then it is up to, there's no way of wiring them up to kind of do their own thing as far as dependency chains. So my thing that I want out of web components is for web components to get their own scope, ideally for people to package their own dependencies with it and have some sort of standard for how to provide overrides of those dependencies when you're saying, no, I use my version of jQuery, here's a link or something like that. I think that part of it is really core. And when I last looked at web components, which admittedly was like a year and a half ago, it didn't exist and nobody was even talking about it.
Yeah,
and
you were saying that the global nature of it was, so that's your main, and that you need to be able to choose specific versions, which to me seems like, well, isn't there going to be a tool for this? Like we're going to have our own PM version? No?
I mean, I don't think so. I don't see how a tool is possible.
Like a little Docker container for a web component.
Yeah, well, right, but that's, again, goes back to isolation. If everything is in the global JavaScript context, if something that a web component does and something that a web component's dependency does can affect your application or your other dependencies of yours, then that's a real problem toward kind of this vision of being able to assemble applications from all these tiny little components all over the place. That's it. And okay, look, that's an extension of the issue JavaScript has had from the beginning, right? When everything just dumps into the same global context, that's not copacetic with how large applications are meant to work, and all reflects the fact that JavaScript was meant to be like this tiny little thing that stitches together other things.
Yeah, but I thought that like web components was going to have something like, okay, so it's limited by the page itself, which hypothetically makes it more like, because because the web components are encapsulated, you don't need all of like pages.
But how are they encapsulated?
Manages its scope independently, and you can manage it because a page as a unit can only get so large before people are like, this should go somewhere. So
okay. Let me just kind of take a step back and walk through the example that I'm talking through. On my parent page, I'm using jQuery 1.7 and I'm using SignalR. SignalR has a bug in it. It will not work with jQuery 2.0 and up. Or I think it won't even work with 1.9. Now I pull in a web component that inside of it, or even like maybe it's using Angular, which in itself is depending on a jQuery or something like that. It's got like a fourth, fifth party dependency on jQuery. And the version it pulls in is a jQuery 3. So I have to detect that it somehow broke my page, and I have to assemble this. When I'm pulling in this web component, I have to assemble its whole tree of dependencies myself. It's not a matter of, okay, I go in and drop this web component, starts working. It's, okay, I need to sit down, understand this web component and its entire dependency tree, figure out a way how to wire it into my site strategy, which if I'm including global jQuery globally, I probably don't have a strategy. I'm probably just dropping script tags on a page, and I have to figure that out a way. And then also figure out a way where I can either tell its version of jQuery or have load both versions of jQuery simultaneously, but use no conflict in order to get their version of jQuery using the 3.0 version. Kind of like it's failing on that very basic promise of, oh, you just drop it on your page and go, for anything but the very most basic examples where you don't have any dependencies down the line.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it worked that way. I thought that like each like the dependencies were totally encapsulated.
They are not.
Oh, that's weird.
Unless there's something very new there that I've missed in the last year, they are not.
Okay, I did not know that. That's weird. That could totally add a bunch of complexity. I mean, I guess you would. God, what's probably going to happen is people are going to use what you said, like the no conflict flag, a lot, and they'll just hope that the library maintainers are good about not making a bunch of breaking changes between, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like if you don't provide an out for like, all right, the JavaScript context of inside of web components are isolated. If you're not doing that, I mean, honestly, I think just doing virtual DOM-based components or incremental DOM-based, just components that are generated from JavaScript is better, because JavaScript modules at least can be used to isolate stuff, can be used to define and automatically load up your entire dependency tree. And I think so I don't know, if people like start seriously running into this issue, then I could see just people just saying, screw it, I'm just going to do JavaScript generated code, whether it's virtual DOM, incremental DOM, or whatever. So, yeah, and just forgetting about web components entirely. So yeah, that, I don't know. I don't know if anyone else has some experience with it or something like that. I did, like, this is a discussion I started a while ago on, oh my God, what's his name? Axel, JavaScript, Axel guy.
Thinking very seriously about using it because it seems like it would be kind of fun and pretty easy, like for a pretty simple page, right? Like the example that Ryan gave was weird. It was actually like he was using it almost instead of a CMS, right? Like he had the markdown. And I was like, that's actually pretty, like when you think about, because in the world of like web design, there's a lot of people who are like trying to figure out alternative ways to do, like, yeah.
No, and again, my concern is just, look, it would have been fine if web components, if this was all it was, but the messaging around web components has been, no, it's going to allow you to build composite applications, and I just don't see that connecting with like some of the realities of how it does dependency management. And I hope that I'm wrong, because I don't love including stuff through markup, but whatever. I'm not super opposed to it against it either. But just this is coming from an actual experience I had where I tried. I was like, you know what? I'm going to use Polymer. I'm going to use web components. I'm going to be. I basically want to build my entire application as a microservices thing where there's going to be a bunch of services running at a time, and each one of them is going to be contributing bits to the UI in isolation. Now UI is just aggregating it, and then anyone who's working in each of those bits of the UI is free to choose their own frameworks. It's free to choose whatever, and that didn't work, and I couldn't get it working. It was very frustrating.
Huh. Okay, that's good to know. That's funny. I'm glad that you actually have some hands-on experience with it. I'm ready to show my thing, I guess. I don't know what happened, but node fetch was not. It was like unit testing on weird environments, like a React Native environment, is not super straightforward.
Show it. Let's see it.
Yeah. Okay. Can you see my? Okay. You can see my cursor. Cool.
Yep.
And so this was just an idea that my fiance had, actually, where it was just like, she wanted, she was thinking it would be really nice to replace what we both do, which is like use Google Keep. Like, so when we have a friend who mentions something, or just we have an idea for a gift, I put it in my phone, just like, when you have costume ideas or something, and so later on you can refer to it and be like, oh, her birthday is coming up. Oh, I had all these awesome ideas. And I was like, and I looked around, and apparently a lot of other people do this, and they use like sticky notes or whatever. And I was like, well, it sounds like a good excuse to make a CRUD app. So I built this little prototype of this app called Gifter in React Native. I guess it's probably my first, like, what I would say slightly more than a demo app. And it was the first time I used this thing called Nativebase. If you don't know what Nativebase is, our mutual friend Gant he's like, I didn't realize he said he was a top 100 contributor to React Native. That dude is serious. He was like, do you want to like help host the React meetup, or should I? And I was like, well, I could help, whatever. We were both like on the same level of experience with React Native, maybe, and no, not even close. It's like, no, you obviously should be the man dictating.
He wrote Ignite. Yeah,
Ignite, and he was like actually Nativebase and Ignite. But like the thing I was one of the issues that I've had with React Native specifically is just like there are a lot of cool components, and it tells you, oh, like you can't use this property on the Android version, and they're slowly getting more parity, but there are differences that mean that like you have to almost keep a list of components as you're building the iOS version. Like if you're doing iOS first, you keep a list of components that are maybe incompatible that you then have to shim when it comes time to build the Android version. And like the actual demo app they show is this app where literally all the Android version is like so the way that React Native works, it's super, like when you start a React Native project, there's like an index.whatever page, index.iOS. So like, whoops, wrong. Yeah, so that's index.iOS, and that's automatically generated when you like do React Native, when you create a new React Native project using the React Native CLI. And then there's this other one called index.android. And like the example is just import from index.iOS. And it's like, oh, so you have you've built an app that has total feature parity between the iOS and the Android. I mean, it's not that big a deal, but like for someone like me who's like, when I finish building the iOS app, it's gonna be a tough sell to be like, oh, okay, and now build it's like, this was a rhetorical exercise. I would like to, but I personally use Android, right? And so it makes so much sense for just people who are doing little things like this to actually use something like native base. And not only that, but it also has like a whole bootstrap. And I was just giving him an example because his version was Ignite, which is an awesome, and they have different, his version of native base or his competitor is great, but like you can go to the Ignite webpage and most of their documentation is just like, or at least like the one that's the most visible version of documentation as I could see was this app that is a demo app, and it was super useful, but like having something like this where you can just be like, oh, I need a button like this, oh, okay, like exactly, is super useful. And the way it's on this one long page, and also it has all these generic styles, so it's like, I'm looking for something that I don't have to, like, I don't want it to look terrible, like the way that when you're building a prototype, but I don't feel like actually digging through the muck of like React Native animate, like you can just go crazy with that and get super distracted. And so there's like this happy medium between like, a totally like bare bones form and like a fully styled original app. And native base like lets you do that, where you don't have to be you don't have to be a designer to make something that's presentable, and like, even if it's just a prototype, it's like cool to have something that's presentable. So I guess I'll just take you through it. So this is, just quit. So like, this is like the view, like the view is just your friends. You enter them in, like, let's say George.
So just really quickly, native base is like a component library basically?
Yeah, it's a component library, exactly. And so George, and I want to add a gift, which is George like, George, what's something you like?
What?
What's something?
Complaining about JavaScript.
What's something for your birthday, dude?
Oh, okay. Give me a Vive.
Let's go with beer.
A beer?
No, what a Vive? On a Vive.
Vive?
Yeah.
Berman?
No, like the HTC Vive.
Oh, the Vive? Oh, the Vive?
Yeah.
Okay, you want an H Vive. And then here you can like put your link to it. Link to Vive. Okay, very simple, right? It's persistent, all that good stuff. And the thing that I've been doing, and so at the same time I've been building this Node app, right? Like that's meant to handle all this, and it's kind of my first, say, more serious Node app. And I've gone through a lot of I've actually learned a lot about Node and about like its strengths and its weaknesses, and a lot about Mongo, which is cool, though from what I've heard, a lot of people say that it's kind of unstable, so I'm afraid. But I like went through the stage of like passing all my callbacks, or passing basically resolving all my data as a callback in the storage. But I was like, no, these need to be atomized functions, so I just promisified everything. And according to Stephen, all of the libraries like Mongoose and whatever, you don't need them. Like the MongoDB has a sophisticated enough like API and feature set that you don't need to pull in something like Mongoose. Yeah, and I wrote a bunch of unit tests for it, and I'm using this little thing called
Do you have a server that stuff is
Yes.
saving to?
Yeah, I do.
I
I
see.
do.
Where are you hosting it?
I'm hosting it on DigitalOcean. Yeah. So it's yeah. So right now it's being hosted just locally because I'm still in the development phase. But
How's the security? How does that work?
I've been using the security work. Well, it's a little okay. So what's gonna go down is I'm gonna have to pass this. I'm gonna store this access token. I think encrypted on the server. Then I'm gonna have a key. I'm gonna have some kind of. It's gonna be in local storage, and the key for the is gonna be in local storage, and then I'm gonna decrypt it client side. But the access token is literally not going to have any any really dangerous, like if the database leaks, it wouldn't be terrible because all it has is just the name and like the Facebook ID, you know.
So where does the token come from?
The token it comes from Facebook.
Okay.
So when a user logs in, let me see if I can.
Oh, so you're forcing log in with Facebook, right?
So you log in, hit OK, it passes it. It says unhandled, promise. Well, whatever. This is.
Sure.
I need to fix it. But anyways, dismiss it. That's the. And if you look at you can see what went down, what came through the pipe down here. So it says like. This is my auth token, which I will definitely, but again, the auth token doesn't have anything serious because it just gives you access to my Facebook and ID, but I will invalidate it after we finish.
Well, it would give you access to someone else's list, right?
It wouldn't. So originally the whole thing was going to have originally it was going to be like, you can sign in and then it'll populate it. You can choose your friends and all that stuff. And then I went through all the trouble of like, I don't know. I did a bunch of stuff, and then I started reading the documentation. Like I was like, okay, so how do I actually get people's friends list? Because there's a in their Graph API, there's a space for acquiring their friends list. I don't know. It's like an endpoint, and apparently they removed the friend list feature in a version like 2 point whatever of the Facebook API. And so now the only way to get someone's friends list is both parties have to approve your app, which is basically impossible. Like if every single, so I can only get friends populating the friends list of a user if that friend has approved my application. So basically making it super useless for something like that. So right now I'm only using it to like identify users as unique so they don't have to like sign in.
Okay. So wait, so you get your token, and the token, so I still don't understand why stealing a token would give you access to someone else's gift list.
Well, it wouldn't, because if the token was encrypted on their end,
so their device gets a token from Facebook, right?
What?
Their device gets a token from Facebook, right?
Yeah.
And then that's how you track them on your server, right?
Yes.
And then so on the device you encrypt the token using what key? And using what?
They store on their device.
Using a key, so a key that's downloaded with the application.
Yes.
Okay. Technically, I don't think that's secure because anyone can then decompile and find it. But okay. Yeah. So then you encrypt the token and you send it to, but I mean, like every single device has the same encryption key, right?
No, I wanted each device to have their own unique encryption key.
So then when the app opens for the first time, it has to reach out to the server and say, give me an encryption key, right?
Not necessarily.
How else would it do that?
Only during login. Only because
Mhm.
yeah.
So when you log in, it would reach out and get an encryption key,
yeah.
and it would get a token from Facebook,
Mhm.
and then it would encrypt that with the token, send it back,
Exactly. Yeah.
and then you have the same key on the server, so you can decrypt it.
Yeah. And I haven't implemented the decryption, but what goes down is it throws. So all that encryption stuff is just like what I think I'm going to be doing.
Yeah,
so it hits this route. So it basically, when it sends it, it hits this route, and this route just is a simple token, right? Then so I then have to verify, right, that this token is legit as well, right? So I'm not going to just trust, any request. So I check it out. If it's valid, I get a bunch of data from Facebook, right? The same kind of data that it's already got, right? Then
so you're checking with Facebook if that token is valid.
Yeah, exactly. Because you can't know that, right?
So that's more like checking that it hasn't been revoked, basically. There's no.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Okay. So I'm not actually sure what the encryption bit is for then.
I was thinking, well, it's something I saw someone had mentioned on Stack Overflow. But basically what happens is if your database leaks, you store the key, the encryption key, right? Like so you use a generic form of encryption, and you store the encrypted token. This is on your server, and then don't store the key, and you just store the unique encryption key on the user's side. And then,
but you need the encryption key on the server in order to decrypt it.
No, he decrypts it and then I guess sends it in plain text down the. I don't know.
It's just good. I'm just trying to think through all of the things. So I mean, you can encrypt the token all you want, but if both sides have a way of decrypting it, then the only thing you're protecting it from is transit over the wire, and transit over the wire should already be protected by SSL, right?
Yeah, that was the
plan. You're good over there. So you already have HTTPS.
Yeah, you're right. I would have to actually have it, and I would have to have a key stored on the server. Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, but you probably are using it.
But SSL is already protecting me.
Yeah, you already are using it because you're not logging in without it.
Yeah, and it's actually you can't. Yeah, and it's already Facebook won't allow you to make any graph API without encryption.
Yeah. So then the other question is, if someone stealing the database, well then okay, they can get your encrypted tokens, but then if the decryption key is per user, you also have to store the decryption key somewhere in the database. So then when they steal your database, they steal your decryption key and the encrypted values, so they can decrypt it.
We use a separate database, I guess. Would probably be.
Yeah, you could use a separate database. It's like all provisioned up to, high heaven and everything. But I mean, I don't see how in your situation it matters. It's something that's worthwhile.
It actually doesn't. And so if someone was to steal your access token, they would be able to get your name, your Facebook ID, and then they would be able to probably they'd be able to make a post request or a GET request to me with that access token and be able to get all the data associated with this app. So I guess long story short, don't leak I'm not exactly sure how an access token leaks. I think that it's much more common like on a traditional web app, but I know it can happen. And certainly like if it was an access token that guarded a bunch of super sensitive information, I would be thinking about it more seriously. The problem that I'm having right now is like creating test users, because basically, like if I log in using my own Facebook account, it will give me an access token for a really long time. You know, I think it expires in 3 months. But if I log in with a test user's access token, it expires in like 2 hours. Which means that so every single time I want to run my test suite and not have it break, I need to actually go to the config and like.
But I mean, your test suite is running against the actual service, or is it stubbing stuff out?
It's running against the actual service.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it might be a good idea to minimize that as much as possible. So anything that doesn't completely, that can't, I mean, ideally you would have a couple of tests, there are integration tests that would run against it, and test like very large scale things, and then for everything else you would stub it out.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. So like when it hits my my route, like, and gets to that point, it just grabs like my own or longer lived access token.
Right, exactly.
Gotcha. Yeah, that would be. I'm not exactly sure how to dynamically like replace it. Like it would be cool to be able to dynamically replace this. I could probably use dynamic.
No, you would so take that part where you're calling fetch or whatever. You would put that into a function, and then have that function injected service or a module or something like that, and then you substitute out that module when you want to use a stubbed version. So are you using JavaScript modules or?
Yeah.
Or what? Yeah, what are you using here? Like scroll up to the top, show me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Wait, do you have import statements? Require. Okay, cool. Common JS. So even easier. So let's find a good example of something where you hit a third party, like an external service. All right. I mean, they're on line 20. Wait, on line 21, that's a handler, right? This is server code, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so wait, so you're talking about testing your server code? I guess either way, right? So okay, where's that access to the Facebook that you would like to stub?
So
yeah. Yeah, this is all server code that we're looking at.
Sweet that I oh yeah, this one. Facebook and yeah, if Facebook access token is valid. This one.
Okay, cool. So this calls. So what is the thing that this calls? This is calling into. See, hold on. So this is first of all a problem. This test will not run without a web server running your application, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So right there, these are not unit tests.
Okay.
These are broad scale integration tests. They depend on the entire HTTP stack. There's a method, right? So whatever happens when you call API/user/data, there's a route that's bound to. Can you show me that in your application?
Mm-hmm. Right here.
Okay. So the way to do this, again, if you're moving this to something that's more unit testing style, would be to maybe even take everything that's inside of here and just move it to a function.
I was trying to figure out how do you need move everything inside of app.get?
That whole callback can be a function. Now, I think what you have here though is close because like if you all the logic as far as what it would mostly do would be that function in line 39, right? Get user by access token.
which is in storage.
So question then becomes in your test, do you really have to test what happens when you hit that API endpoint, or can you just call this function and see what and directly?
That's a good question. I actually have not tried to. My whole point was like I was using Postman originally, and I was just like, this is getting really repetitive. Like, and so I was just like, I just want to kind of do exactly what Postman is doing. And so it's cool that, I mean, so far it's been cool that it alert me like, oh, that this isn't that. It's a really nice, really easy way to test your and get more control and get more granular like error messages versus using Postman. So right now, like basically this is most of my tests here are a replacement
for using Postman. Yeah. So I think that's absolutely correct. And you're kind of doing a form of BDD that way. Just a form of it that doesn't get a lot of nice benefits that you could. So, you know, obviously what you're doing here
it is annoying to have to start up all of my services, and also to keep all the services in sync is tough. So it's like every time I save app.js, it has to reload. It reloads using node daemon, and then I have to wait an extra beat to run the test suite, right? But then, and the test suite then has to see data, right, onto a production database. So it's like, there's a bunch of points of failure that have that like often I'll get some random failures and I'll be like, okay, I have to like run this again because something wasn't started.
And then there's an even higher level issue with this, right? So let's say you're doing something, you're testing the routes that create gifts, right? So if you run a method, if you're testing, okay, when I create a gift, you know, then there should be one gift in the system. Well, now now you want to write a second gift. When I create a gift that's starred, there should be one gift in the system that's starred. But if the other test ran first, then that test, well, then there will actually be two gifts in the system unless you dropped and recreated your database in between.
Right, which is something that has, like, I was using this little cleanup function like before. So I have it running like you mentioned, and it's worked pretty well.
Right, but now you're talking to like all your services at the same time. It's integration tests. It's good stuff, and you're doing it in a BDD style, which is fine, which is good. But you're missing out on some of the benefits of unit testing. Is
so what's this whole sign on? Like, I don't know. So what you're proposing is that I start subbing out. So instead of this post, so like. What would be the point that I would change here if I wanted to start?
So let's do like one small, like something that could be a unit test. So and we don't have a ton of time, but I'm doing is testing on the level of that one function. So look inside of, let's go look where you were handling that request, right? So you have storage that get user by access token. So storage comes, you know, somewhere you have storage equals require storage or something like that, right? So in your test, you could have require storage. That would give you the thing. Now, the problem with that is if we look at let's look at the definition of this method. So right away, if you did that, you don't need a web server to work. You don't need really a database to work, right?
No.
Well, at the very least, you don't need a web server. So now you can just be
the database, but you don't need the web server.
So now let's look at what dependencies this method actually has.
It literally has this user collection dependency.
User collection's a dependency, sure.
Yeah. And that's all. It doesn't.
Okay. It doesn't actually. I thought it had to hit Facebook at some point.
No.
right. So
They're
that could,
all just like Mongo specific methods.
okay. So then user collection's a dependency, and user collection comes from where? What's the method definition for user
It's
collection?
over here. Right. Like, so I db.collection user collection. And so,
Wait, well, okay. Yeah. Okay. So one of the things that might be a good idea is to take that line number 3,
Mhm.
move it into a different common JS module.
Ah,
And then,
I can start importing it. Right.
and now you import your storage JS,
Right. Yeah.
but you do it while inside of a block that stubs out that other one.
Ah, I see that.
And once you do that, you start going like, well, heck, having all of these functions in one file. The next step is you start breaking out all these functions into multiple files, because now you can, because it has a bunch of other dependencies. Well, you don't want to have to stub them out in order to. So it's a process where which the end process of it is you're ending up like with one unit of work in a file, or in a module, just so you can really or to stub out dependencies that way.
Is there a difference between that and just, I mean, because like all these are being exported, right? So you
Yeah.
have a module that exports block.
Well, so I mean, like, but you could do this right now, right? You could go ahead and take that user collection and probably that connect method, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead and put them in a new file. And I mean, you want to keep, you probably, create a new file called or something. Yeah, db.js, sure.
Actually, it's here. I think it's and it would just be like,
Well, yeah, like you're going to export user collection. You probably want that connect thing, right? Too, because that connect method and the connected method, those seem like something that would belong in the DB, right? So that's fine. You're going to leave them in here, but also put them in the other one. Okay. So and then the connect and the connected, you would also need that. So I would, let's say you're exporting an object that has, or you're exporting user collection, a connect method, and an is connected method.
so you would just take the,
Yeah, I would just say copy line 1 through 1. Yeah. So let's fix this up.
should I module that export?
Yeah, a module.export. And I mean, this is all just half steps because this is a step we can take really quickly now.
Yeah.
Eventually, you do a lot more than that. So now you do a connect method. The Mongo.connect would go into a connect method, right?
So, connect method. And
Same way. It would be connect. Wait, what's going on? Yeah, there we go. And then you also want a user collection method on there, right?
yeah. No, you've got this db.collection.
Because you'll have access, as long as connect was called beforehand, it will have access to db.collection. So, I mean, that's no different than what you had before.
No.
I mean, maybe that's what you want, but for now, don't call connect. We're going to just keep it exactly the same as what you had before, just by moving stuff around in different files. So create a user collection method on this export object. So just to say what that function on line 4, move it into your export, right? So it's going to be, it needs a colon. All right, so now we get rid of line 3 and 4.
Line. Right.
Yeah, and you need to require Mongo, I think. So yeah, just grab that from storage.js, right? Okay, cool. So you have something like this. Now what your storage becomes, oh yeah, maybe clean that up.
Yeah, I'm just not clear.
Yeah, okay. You need that, you need a parens. You don't need line 10.
Oh,
You don't need yeah, there we go. Cool.
oh.
Yep, const. All right, so now in your storage.js, what you're going to do, you're just going to require DB, right? D or let DB, const DB equals DB. You don't need line 1 or line 3. Well, actually, line 3. We're gonna keep line 3 just for convenience sake, and line 3 is just going to be db.userCollection. I wouldn't even make it a lambda because it's already a function. So user collection equals db.userCollection, and you could replace it later, but.
Right.
But yeah. But it doesn't even need to be in a lambda. It can be a direct assignment.
Oh, yeah.
And now inside of connect, you're just connect is going to become db.connect. And that's it. It's just a single line that all it does is call db.connect with no parameters.
Yeah.
It's a function.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, but you could just do a straight up assignment there as well if you want. Connect colon db.connect.
That would probably make the most sense.
Yeah, sure, do that. And then connected becomes db.connected. And now what we've done is a refactoring, which should in principle keep working, run your test check, but should keep working the same way. But now what you can do is you could require storage.js directly, but provide your own version of DB. So just something that has a connect, a connected, and a user collection method.
It's pretty slick. Yeah, I'm gonna start stubbing stuff out because it does get really hairy. I mean, trying to keep all of these applications in sync, especially when I'm just again trying to test one thing. I guess that is the word, like integration testing, which is what I was doing, which is a very important thing. But
yeah, because now you can test that you didn't screw anything up by this refactoring, but you get really nice benefits from being able to go to that lower level.
Yeah. Okay. The next thing I do is I'm going to start importing storage and just testing those methods by themselves. If you want to test this, the thing is, this has been the hardest part of the last couple hours working on this. Just this logic here. And so this is actually something that I needed to test.
So write test for it first. But
Yeah.
that's another thing. So now you're doing a fetch to an API, right?
Yeah, and
that should go in another file, and you could stub that. That should just go into another module, right? So you pass in, it'll just put it into a function where you pass in I don't know, whatever you're passing into there, whatever FB res JSON is, or whatever, or maybe even go up one level higher up and test at the level of that post handler.
So you're breaking the inside of a then method into a separate module.
Yeah, well, into a separate function, and then whether that function comes from a separate module.
But it has to return a venable.
So
I would be having to refactor it to make sure that thing adds a promise.
No, well, but I mean, you could just return a promise. So look, okay, here's step one of this. Let me show you. Everything from line 77 through line 86.
Mhm.
Just take that and put it in a function. Just put that in a function which takes fbResJSON as a parameter. So call it, just you put it right there, just surround it in a function right now.
Okay.
And call that function. I had a coworker now at first which would call all these things like monkey or something like that, just so that way he would never commit with any monkeys in his.
Oh, and he probably added a
It was his like thing. Was like, he was like, I don't have a good name for it right now, but I need to think of it really soon. So
Yeah.
like, so I'm just gonna call it monkey.
Yeah, and you
And
can
then you don't.
custom ES module that just says called no monkey, and it's custom rule.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So now pass looks like fbRes.json is going to pass that as a parameter. Okay, now and now just invoke your function right after it.
And
fbRes.json.
I feel to go to.
Well, wait, you need to pass the parameter into there.
Okay.
Now the next step is you take that function you created and move it to the top of the file. Okay. Now, are there any errors? Yes.
Yeah.
ResCB.
So it
Cool.
had taken.
Add that as a parameter. Add token as a parameter too.
Yeah.
It's line 89.
Res.
It's token, ResCB. Okay. Now take that function that's at the top of your file and put it in a module.
Oh my god. You're gonna have so many
Yeah.
files.
All right. It actually doesn't. It's kind of bad in the intermediary. Once you've kind of done this enough and kind of gotten used to it, it doesn't end up being that
I've
bad.
done it a ton of times. I mean, like I do this in a React where I'm breaking out all these components, and it's really it can get to the point where you're just like, I actually am losing my sense of context because I'm like everything is so atomized. It's very for me. It's like be like, this is actually not helping me envision it. But the testing is important enough.
Well, okay, so the underlying reason why we're doing this is just because we need a dependency injection seam, right? A way to inject dependencies, and that's just what your refactoring wasn't quite done. You need to just export that function directly.
Oh.
You don't even need it.
What's the normal way to export a function?
Just module.exports and equals. Yeah, there you go.
Object literal.
Yeah, and now you have to give it a good name actually, but the reason we're factoring into modules is because we need a way to inject dependencies and stub dependencies, and the require command happens to be a pretty good way of doing that. There's other ways of doing it. For example, you could have.
How do you? I don't know how to do that. How do you? Let's just call this fbResJSON. I'm probably gonna. Like, let's say I had to import this. What would the command be if I wanted to say stub out fbResJSON? And
oh wait, let's say you had to what? Sorry.
Oh, what would the command be if I wanted to import it, but import it with these things stubbed out? So like, import. So
how to import?
Am I using .bind? Like what are?
No. So like, there's different ways of doing it, but there's, for example, synon required, which is a part, synon require, right? which is something that does it. There's just a really quick Google search.
Yeah, I have that installed.
And
I was like, oh, okay, so you're basically using like a special libraries version of Require.
yeah, there's a require stub. It's something, right? You can just overwrite window.require or global.require or whatever. But you could do that. But yeah, you just look it up and you practice it. Once you get it, it's pretty easy to do.
Yeah, these are all experiments for me to become a better programmer and better, especially at unit testing, which is something that and knowing that what I was doing actually wasn't even unit testing, very useful. And I know we're at time, but I'm actually seeing the benefits of modularizing everything, especially as I'm testing.
Yeah.
So I think that will be the next step.
And so hold on, just one thing. You don't need to give it a name in your function. That's why you were getting, just module.exports equals. The name of it is going to be whatever the name of the file is, right? Yeah. Local URL, that's going to you need to pass in as a parameter probably, or you can just put it in here depending on.
Yeah. I have.
Yeah. So you that's the process you kind of do for this, and that's the thing. Like I said, require is one kind of helpful theme by which to provide your own dependencies, but you don't have to. There's other ways of doing it. So, for example, another way of doing it, let's say your storage function that we had from before. Rather than stubbing require, what if you had an optional second parameter called DB? And if that was provided, you would use that. And if it wasn't provided, you would use whatever the DB.
Wouldn't it be weird to be actually writing your testing kind of code? Isn't that going against best practices? Like you're contaminating your code with sort of test logic?
Yes. Yeah, it's not best practice to do dependency injection that way, but it's also vastly preferable toward than not doing dependency injection at all. And it's the simplest way.
Can you use default parameters some way? Or I would use.
Well, you would use a default parameter. That's exactly what you would do. Dependency injection. That's still absolutely.
Dependency.
Yeah, it's just it's another way of doing it. And basically, if you're saying, "Oh man, mocking requires the require keyword is a pain in the ass. I don't like doing it that way," then fine, do it that other way. It's better than the alternatives.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a little bit messier, but it's got some benefits. And that only your function signature very explicitly states what all the dependencies are, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, that's true. So it actually is. That does have some. I don't exactly know how that can.
It's not the.
But it's kind of. It's cool from a tooling perspective if it's giving your function. If your tooling is giving you hints about it.
It gets annoying. It gets annoying typing out, which is why everyone doesn't do it that way all the time.
Would you use .bind in your test? So what I mean is you have your test methods. And you're this seems like it would be a great opportunity to have, because you would import the OG version and then you would just be whatever blah 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 let's fb res json .bind this, and then you still have your and then you you would actually still be
you could come up with a million different ways to make that pattern nicer, better, whatever. But I mean, just at that point, you're getting really fancy, and you might as well stub require.
Yeah, or
you can. Either way, the fact that you're isolating and injecting dependencies is the important bit. No. Anyway, all right, we are past the hour.
Well, thanks, George, for the deck. I wish tests were passing. They were last night, I swear. I'm getting closer to that. I have to say, user authentic is complicated. It's actually complicated. It's not
Yeah,
It can be like,
there's a lot of things that can happen.
there's a lot of stuff. And just testing it is tough because there's a lot of like steps. Like to like you have to auth the user, but then you have to also, if it's specifically OAuth. So that's what I learned this week.
Yeah. All right, I think we're done.
Good times, guys.
Cool.
Laters.
Bye.
All right, bye, JB. Bye, Seth.